Welcome to the City Council meeting of Wednesday, August 2nd, 2017. Can I have the roll call, please?
Dan Carey.
Present.
Peg Coniff. Salem Derby.
Present.
Jennifer Hayes.
Here.
J.P. Kaczynski.
Here.
Joe McCoy.
Here.
Dan Rist.
Here.
Tamara Smith.
Here.
Joy Winnie.
Here.
Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Could I please have a motion for the approval of the minutes of July 12th?
So moved.
Second. Motion approval of July 12 minutes. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any abstentions?
Abstain.
One abstention. Any noes? Motion still passes. Public speak time. If there's anyone here from the public who would like to address the council for anything other than what's on our public hearing, please come to the podium and state your name and address. Okay, not seeing it. We can move on to communications, elected officials, boards and committees, and correspondence. We have none. Mayor communications. Mayor Paget.
Nice to see everybody again. So I just have a couple of quick updates and announcements. One is a little exciting. We now are broadcasting Wi-Fi from the boardwalk. I think that's pretty exciting. And it's up and running as of now, as of a few days ago. The other is I just wanted to update you on, you've been asking about the Attorney General's reports. So we just heard from the Attorney General's office, and they are reporting that their report will be ready to be shared on August 24th. And that's all I can think about. But I was just mentioning to the chief, we should mention about the players. So seeing how, and we have some coaches here too.
So in case you didn't see in the paper over the last 2 weeks, the last 2 weekends in July, we had our U13 East Hampton Intermediate Baseball Little League team win the district championship, sectional championship, and the state championship for only the third time for baseball. They went down to New York, Long Island, and played pretty high level of competition. We mostly have 11 and 12-year-olds. They were playing 13-year-olds. Came out of there in fourth place in the Northeast region.
That's great.
Our 10 and 11-year-old girls Little League softball team won the state championship. That's the second year in a row for that group of girls that they've won the state championship. So we had 2 good weekends in a row. We may have woke up a few people the second night, giving them their victory parade into town, but it was well deserved. And for its town this small to win 2 state championships in Little League sports, I think is a pretty good accomplishment.
Congratulations.
Yep.
Congratulations to you. Okay, I think we can move on to reports of standing committees. Finance, Councilor Rist.
Yes, Mr. President. Finance Committee met and is going to have our public hearings this evening. They were all approved by the Finance Committee. We will not be meeting again until September, because I would like to, under new business, deal with the donation account requests, since we normally approve donation accounts at one session, unless someone objects. This is a request by the police chief to close an old Cop Cards donation account, which, as the mayor informed me, was approved way back when we had our meetings at Town Hall. And he wants to move this money into the regular donation account. This is a simple matter of movement of donated funds from one police account to another police donation account, and makes sense to me. That way the police donation account could use the money. So unless anybody objects, I'd like to move that we agree to close the donation account, the police gift account for the Cop Cards.
I'll second that motion.
Oh, and part of that is to move the money.
Second.
Okay, a motion, a second to close the police Cop Card donation account and move the balance to the police donation account. Additional questions or comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, motion passes.
So there will be no more Finance Committee meetings until September. And I might get a call from Counselor Connor from Hawaii, but I'll tell her not to worry. That concludes.
Public Safety, Counselor Hayes.
Thank you, Mr. President. We had a meeting last night, which I was unable to attend, regarding the school and railroad streets, and I'm going to let Dan Carey give you the update on that one.
We were hoping to bring in some public input last night, and we didn't get much, so we want to keep working on that and keep reaching out to people and give folks an opportunity. Again, that the proposal on the table is to make Railroad Street one-way from Payson to Union to help ease some of the congestion and help the emergency vehicles coming out of the safety complex, and to make School Street one-way from Union to Center to alleviate some of the congestion there. That's a very narrow street, and especially during the school year and with buses and with pickup and with drop-off, it's a dangerous street. So that's something, please talk to folks, spread the word, give us some feedback. Those are two ideas on the table. And then we're also continuing to review traffic rules and orders, section 1-26 at the request of the DPW.
Okay.
And the next meeting is not the first Tuesday of September. It's moved to September 12th to avoid that Labor Day weekend.
I was actually going to see if we could move that because I'm out of town.
Tentatively September.
Okay. Okay.
And there's no new business, so this concludes.
Okay. Thank you. Appointments, Counselor Smith.
Yeah, the appointments subcommittee met earlier tonight at 5:30 downstairs in the conference room, and we considered 2 mayoral appointments for consideration before the full council. The first appointment is for Rachel Phillips for the ECA Grants Committee with a term expiration of 12/31/19. Rachel is already a member of the ECA Plus Committee, which is the partner to the Grants Committee. The Grants Committee members come from the ECA Committee. So, I'm gonna say, I don't have a resume of Rachel, but in terms of her supporting documents and her past work with the ECA Grant Committee, there's been no, what is that? Not rejection of, but no one has come forth to say objection to her appointment. Couldn't think of the word. So the committee voted 3-0 to recommend Rachel Phillips for this appointment. So that's what we bring forth to the full committee. And
Do that as a or do you want to do them both together, or is it independently?
oh, I can do them independently. I didn't know if you wanted to call a motion for a vote.
Okay, it's up to you.
Yes, let's call a motion for Rachel Phillips.
Second.
Okay, motion and second to approve Rachel Phillips, ECA Grants Committee, expiration 12/31/2019. Additional questions or comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Motion passes.
Okay, and the second appointment is for Amy Marsters for the Neshawanak Pond Committee with a 12/31/19 expiration. Amy Marsters, her resume was talking about how she's in the aquatic recreation business and has worked for several retail outlets and has an education in environment and recreation. So our committee felt that it would be a really good fit for the Neshawanak Pond Committee. So we voted 3-0 to move Amy Marsters forward as a candidate. So I'd like to make a motion to appoint Amy Marsters to the Neshawanak Pond Committee with a term expiration of 12/31/19.
Second.
Okay, a motion and second to approve Amy Mercer's Neshawanak Pond Committee, 12/31/2019. Any questions or comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Motion passes.
Thank you. And my printer broke right before the meeting tonight, so that's why I'm feeling a little discombobulated. But I just can't recall if on our overall, if we had any new appointments
No.
coming up. Okay, then we didn't make a new appointment meeting because we don't have any new agenda items. That concludes.
Okay, thank you. Ordinance, Councilor Derby.
Thank you, Mr. President. We had a joint public hearing with the planning board, I think it was 2 weeks ago, and that was in relation to the seasonal cottage zoning amendment. So just to catch people up, I don't know if everybody knows what that is, but it's a ordinance that would allow people to have parcels of 5 acres or more to be able to put seasonal cottages on that acreage. East Hampton has been identified by the planner, by the master plan. It has basically a shortage of short-term housing. We don't have any hotels or motels wanting to move here. We're a little too far off the beaten path. We have one bed and breakfast. So what we're creating is, Airbnb market, which currently is unregulated in East Hampton. So that's something that maybe, the city can look at. However, this proposal is something that could potentially decrease the pressure. If we have parents coming into town for Wilson graduation, we have people coming into town for cultural chaos, spillover from Northampton, and what it allows is if we can create a way to have more people stay in East Hampton, then we can create more use of our services and the good type of services, restaurants and shops and things of that nature. So that being said, there is one parcel of property that people are concerned that this might be happening on. Apparently there was something happened there previously that was traumatic to the neighbors. But we are having a good discussion, and the reason why I'm saying this and taking this time is because I want people to engage. So if anybody out there hears this and is interested in this, come to our meetings. I believe our next joint public meeting with the planning board is in September. I want to 5th, which is the Tuesday after Labor Day. I just wanted to put that out there. We do not have, I haven't been able to confer with my colleagues, but I am going to tentatively set our next meeting for 6 p.m. August 16th. And I say tentative because if, with vacation schedules, if I need to push that forward a week to get everybody there, I might have to do that. And at that meeting, 16th of August. It's 2 weeks from today. So maybe the next Wednesday after that. But it will be posted. Barbara will have it, and it will be downstairs and online. And we will be talking about probably having some discussion on the seasonal cottage zoning, looking at plastic bag zoning. And we still have a couple other things on our agenda, and we're going to be talking about that, whether we want to keep those or how we want to deal with them, because we have a lot of things kind of hanging on our agenda that I would like to see cleared up. That concludes.
Okay. Property, Councilor Kwasinski.
We had before us a request to ask the legislature for an extension for a long-term lease, the ability for the city to have a 40-year lease, so that we would be able, for the old town hall building, this would help to keep the building, to make it financially feasible for somebody to go in there and do the work and get the project done, by allowing for certain tax credits, which wouldn't be eligible to someone other than an owner of the property, or someone who had a long-term lease, such as a 40-year lease. The state doesn't allow in its laws for municipalities to have such long-term leases without special acts of the legislature. Therefore, the committee had voted 3-0 to request such an act before the legislature, and we checked out with Attorney Fitzgibbons, who said, yep, this looks pretty good, you can go forward with it, and I'm ready to present it if that be the will of the council. If there are any other questions, or no, okay. I suppose I should, we have to read, you have to read, sorry, we have to get through it. An act authorizing the city of East Hampton to lease certain real estate, being enacted in the Senate and House of Representatives in general court assembled, and by the authority of the same as follows. Section 1, notwithstanding any general or special law to the contrary, the city of East Hampton, acting by and through its city council and its mayor, may enter into a long-term lease for not to exceed 40 years to facilitate the transformation of existing performance space into a dynamic, flexible, multifunction facility capable of serving theater groups, film, musical performances, and other public functions, as well as improve accessibility by installing a separate entrance with elevator access at the Old Town Hall. Such lease may provide that the lessee shall be responsible for the design, development, construction, and maintenance of improvements to the site as may be outlined in the lease agreement. Section 2, the parcel is shown as map 51, parcel 3, on the City of East Hampton's assessor's map. Section 3, this act shall take effect upon its passage. One other point, this does not require us to do anything. This only asks for the special authority to act, which would require further action of the council. I make this in the form of a motion.
Okay. We have a motion and a second to approve the act authorizing City of East Hampton to lease Old City Hall for a long-term lease. Additional questions or comments? Councilor Wing?
I just want to make the comment that I think that this is a really good process going forward, because it'll allow City Space to go ahead with their fundraising activities to restore the Upper Town Hall into a great, what I'm envisioning and what I've seen from the plans, a great entertainment space. So I'm excited. This is great.
Councilor Hayes?
Do we know when this will be on the docket at the State House? Is it
no.
submitted?
It'll be
tomorrow.
submitted as soon as we
Have you gotten any
vote in the
indication
affirmative.
about how long it'll take them to turn this around?
It does take a while, yes. I don't expect that it'll be short term.
Okay.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, motion passes.
Mr. President, I move that the public hearings be open.
Second.
Motion second to approve open public hearings. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, public hearings open. Councilor Briss.
Yes, our first item is the interdepartmental transfer for $45,000. This is to cover the recent negotiation of an increase in pay for the fire department. It's a 3% increase over 2 years. It's front-loaded, so it's not evenly split. I want to comment that since Mayor Cadger's been mayor, we've had non-confrontational negotiation with less legal activity, which saves both the unions and the city a great deal of money, and I compliment the mayor because this gives us, I call it labor peace, and I like that. Would the chief want to say anything about this, or
Okay.
anybody have any questions for the chief
Anyone
or
from
the
the
mayor?
public would like to address the council on this appropriation? Okay, not saying anything. Councilor Rist.
Okay, I move that we approve an interdepartmental transfer for the following appropriation. The amount requested is $45,000 to be transferred from the reserve fund, $45,000 to be transferred to fire department holiday pay, $2,500, fire department full-time regular, $17,500, and ambulance EMS incentive, $25,000, for a total of $45,000. The amount requested will be used for the following purpose: to provide funds to cover the cost of recently negotiated collective bargaining agreement.
Okay, is there a second? Okay, a motion and a second to approve the $45,000 appropriation for fire department negotiated collective bargaining. Any additional questions or comments?
Just a comment, finance approved this 2-0.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, motion passes.
The next three items deals with bonding and borrowing for the purchase of major equipment items. So I want to make, before we get into each individual item, I want to make some general comments. The mayor and the financial administrator indicated to us that this is planned financial method of procurement of high-cost equipment. It is not an indication, because we're borrowing, that the city is in any kind of financial difficulty. Your taxes will not go up. This is a practice which we used in 2014, in fact. Short-term borrowing and bonding, allowing us to purchase at that time an ambulance and a truck, and it's paid off because it's short-term. Because there's short-term borrowing, there's low interest. Because we do not use our stabilization fund for this kind of purchasing, that fund, which is our emergency savings account, shall we say, grows, and our bonding rating has improved to AA, which is huge. That means we save the city taxpayers a lot of interest when we borrow. And because it's short term, when they get paid off, when we have a lot of equipment and we need to buy a new piece, we have this method again. So this is an efficient financial way of doing this kind of purchasing. And as I said, all of these are fairly short-term, 3 to 5 years, and we don't start paying for it, we don't borrow it right away until they're delivered. So I'll get into the first item, is the purchase of a dump truck, and I'll let the DPW director talk about it, but our current truck that this is replacing is 22 years old, the oldest of 5. It's a 1995 truck. This comes with a sander and a plow, correct, Joe? Multi-body. It'll take about a year to get it, and we won't have to pay for it. And all of these budgeted items, by the way, are in our debt and interest budget line. They're already there, so that's how it'd be paid for.
Awesome, okay.
Joe?
Yeah, good evening. Yeah, this will be a large dump truck, stainless steel body on it, so it'll go a long time. It replaces, like Councilor Riss said, a 1995. The frame on this one is completely rotten. It's not like the 2003 that we replaced the frame on. We can't replace this frame. The cab is all rotted. We have way more problems on this one than we had with the 2003. 2003 is a much newer truck. This one can't be resurrected. And we barely made it through last winter with this one. This will be a good piece of equipment when it comes in. We probably won't get it for winter time. It'll probably be coming in next spring or something, because that's how long it's going to take them to build it and equip it with the equipment that we want on it.
Okay, any questions for the director? Okay, I guess you may want to stand nearby, right? Or do you have any more coming up?
Well,
guess not.
I'm going to do these one at a time.
Right, but they're all
I have
paid
to
after
properly
this,
read
right?
the
Yeah.
bonding.
Okay, also then, thank you very much. Is there anyone from the public who'd like to address the council on this appropriation? Feel free to come up. Okay, Councilor Rist.
Question for the clerk. I just read the motion. I don't have to read the borrowing request, which I always normally do for financial matters. Just read the motion.
what's on the agenda.
I move that the city council approve bonding and borrowing as ordered, that the $250,000 is appropriated to pay the cost of purchasing and equipping a dump truck, including payment of all costs incidental and related thereto. That to meet this appropriation, the treasurer, with the approval of the mayor, is authorized to borrow $250,000 to pay the cost of the dump truck under and pursuant to Chapter 44, Section 7(1) of the general laws, or pursuant to any other enabling authority, and to issue bonds or notes of the city therefore, and that the mayor and the treasurer are each authorized to take any and all other action necessary to carry out the purpose of this order.
Second.
Okay, a motion, a second, to approve the bonding of $250,000 for the dump truck. Additional questions or comments?
Finance approved this 2-0, I forgot. All of these have been approved, sorry.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Oppose? Abstain? Motion passes.
In a similar vein, the next item is a $350,000 request for the fire department to purchase an ambulance. This ambulance is replacing an older ambulance, 2006, which has 97,000 miles. It'll be traded in. It's fully equipped. I'm not sure if I'm saying this right, but some of the equipment does move over from the old ambulance to the new one, but it comes fully equipped. Takes about 6 or 7 months for delivery, and again, we don't start borrowing or paying for it until it is delivered. We have a 2010 one that's in pretty good shape, and a 2014 one, which was what we bought the last time we did this borrowing and bonding. I'll ask the chief to come up and add to all of this.
Thank you, Counselor. So this will replace a 2006 ambulance that currently has about 95,000 miles on it. And unlike a car that goes over the road, these are hard miles. It starts cold. It's either foot to the floor on the gas pedal or the brake pedal, so it's a hard 95,000 miles. In 1999, when we moved to the public safety complex, then Chief Morissette decided to add a third ambulance to our fleet. We only had 2 prior to that. Most of it was due to lack of space on Union Street. By maintaining that third ambulance, it provides 2 key points. One is it provides that third ambulance if we do get 3 ambulance calls, which happens more and more every year. So our citizens are not waiting for ambulance to come from Northampton, Southampton, or Holyoke. The other key part of that is it keeps the ambulance revenue in East Hampton, which you may recall, our ambulance receipts all go back to the general fund. So by not having that third ambulance, we have the potential of losing money. And in 2016, that ambulance did 158 responses. So it's earning its keep. It's 158 times the residents of East Hampton didn't have to wait for an ambulance to come from out of town. This, like Councilor said, this ambulance will come with a new stretcher, a new cardiac monitor, and a new laptop computer. Cardiac monitor that's in that ambulance is original. It's 2006. It's an electronic medical device, and by standards, it is an antique. If we didn't get an ambulance, we would either have to downgrade that ambulance from a paramedic level to a basic life support level because the manufacturer no longer supports the annual upgrades. So we definitely have got our money's worth out of that. One of the things we're doing with this ambulance, as we did in 2014, we're taking part in a group purchasing program. Actually, we have the benefit of looking at two and having them compete. It saves us from doing our own RFP, going out to bid. It's both programs are approved under 30B procurement laws, so we just sit down with a vendor, figure out which of the two agencies provides us the best rate, and we don't have to take the time to publish it and develop our own specifications. The current vehicle will be traded in. They don't have a lot of value, but it saves us the headache of doing a surplus auction and getting rid of it. That's all I have.
Additional questions?
Chief, just a quick question. How much do you think the trade-in value is for the vehicle?
If we get $1,500, I'd be happy.
Wow, that's all. Seemed like a lot of money.
There's not a lot of market for used ambulances.
Wow.
Additional questions for the chief? Councilor Winnie?
Was it about 20 years ago that we had to sit down and we went over a safety plan that was developed about the 3 ambulances and putting 3 ambulances on to service each of the sectors of the city in case the bridges were out in certain locations and so forth. So we're just keeping with that safety plan.
Yeah.
Good. Okay.
Okay. Additional questions? Okay, for now, thank you. Anyone from the public like to come to the podium to address the council on this appropriations? Read the time. Okay, Councilor Rist.
I move that the City Council approve bonding and borrowing as ordered, that $350,000 is appropriated to pay the cost of purchasing and equipping an ambulance, including payment of all costs incidental and related thereto. That to meet this appropriation, the treasurer, with the approval of the mayor, is authorized to borrow $350,000 to pay the cost of the ambulance under pursuant to Chapter 44, Section 7.1 of the general laws, or pursuant to any other enabling authority, and to issue bonds or notes of the city therefore, and that the mayor and the treasurer are each authorized to take any and all other action necessary to carry out the purpose of this order.
Second.
Okay, a motion and a second to approve the bonding of $350,000 for equipping and purchasing a new ambulance. Additional questions or comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, abstained, motion passes.
The next item is a large item. It's a fire truck. We don't buy fire trucks very often. I think we got one through a federal grant. Then we got the big ladder truck, but this is one where we're paying for it. Again, this method of borrowing and bonding makes it possible for us to make this kind of a purchase without dipping into our stabilization accounts or capital accounts. It's a much better way of purchasing. It takes 330 days for delivery of this item, so we won't be paying anything until that happens. A lot of the equipment will transfer. I think it comes with new hoses and nozzles. Well, you'll explain that. Replaces the 1995 one built to fit the old fire station. It only had lap belts, very small cab. And as the chief explained, this is also being purchased through the co-op purchasing program. And I'll let the chief come up and explain further.
So as Councilor Rist said, this is a 1995. It was purchased to fit, and it barely fit into Union Street. The cab design, because of the space limited, is extremely awkward to get out of the back seats. You can't stand up to get out, and it's about 2 steps before you can open the door. So I won't say that it led to injuries, but it led to strain on the back trying to get out of the truck. Because of its age, it only has the lap belts. It doesn't have the 3-point safety harness that is required in all cars. And it was even required in cars then, but not in fire trucks. The new ones have a 3-point harness. The total cab area inside has airbags in case it's ever involved in a rollover accident. The current vehicle does not have air conditioning. And on a good day where it's below 30 degrees, if it keeps the heat keeps it to 40, 45, it's a good day. They didn't design fire trucks then for comfort. There will be new equipment purchased with it. Some of the hose that's on this truck now was purchased in 1977 when we bought a fire engine, which was actually the one purchased prior to this in 1995. And the extrication set, which is the Jaws of Life, was purchased in 1989. It's also on this truck. The newest equipment on the truck came with it in 1995 when we purchased it, the nozzles, some of the hoses. So we've got our money's worth out of that. This truck also will be traded in. I haven't got a price yet because none of the vendor we're dealing with doesn't want it. He's trying to find somebody to take it. The last 3 trucks we get rid of, 1 went to Central America, 2 went to museums. They were so old. So trying to find somebody interested in buying this one could prove difficult. He's working with a company, I think it's in Oklahoma, that purchases trucks that can still be salvaged and usable. But right now I have no trade-in value on this. I don't think it's going to be much.
Any questions for the chief? Okay, thank you very much. Anyone from the public who would like to address the council on this appropriation, feel free to come up. Not seeing any. Councilor Rist.
Thank you, Mr. President. I therefore move that the council approve bonding and borrowing as ordered, that $650,000 is appropriated to pay the cost of purchasing and equipping a fire truck, including payment of all costs incidental and related thereto. That to meet this appropriation, the treasurer, with the approval of the mayor, is authorized to borrow $650,000 to pay the cost of the fire truck under and pursuant to Chapter 44, Section 7.1 of the general laws, or pursuant to any other enabling authority, and to issue bonds or notes of the city therefore, and that the mayor and the treasurer are each authorized to take any and all other action necessary to carry out the purpose of this order.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve the borrowing of the $650,000 for purchasing and equipping a new fire truck. Additional questions or comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Motion passes. Councilor Derby, I believe.
Thank you, Mr. President. So what we have is a proposal to amend our medical marijuana ordinance. This is specifically relating to the hours of operation. When we first started working with the medical marijuana ordinance, it was a model ordinance that was sent out from the state. We worked with it, massaged it, made it work for East Hampton. And because of that, we were able to get a company to come to East Hampton to do this. And one of the things we didn't change in the original model ordinance was the time. So we didn't adjust the 8 to 8 time frame that was kind of cookie cutter across the board. And some representatives from Hamden Care thought that it would be, on 2 different fronts, it would be beneficial for them to be able to adjust their time within a broader range of hours. For the first reason is safety. Moving product, moving cash shipments, etc., need to be staggered, need to be random, need to occur at different times. So this allows them to have a broader time frame to operate within. And second is a competitive advantage. There is a dispensary in Northampton, and if they can adjust their hours to be more competitive, which would then allow patients who need to get their medicine an opportunity to be able to get their medicine in East Hampton, they would have that opportunity. And I think that one of the things that we talked about, this doesn't necessarily mean that they would be open from 6 a.m. to 11 every day. This just gives them a kind of a broader framework to operate within, because really the market's going to drive what hours they're going to be open. this just allows them to have a broader range. And I see Steve Riley, the attorney for Hamden Cares here. I don't know if he wants to say anything before we get in.
There'll be time in, yeah, why don't you come up?
It's good to see everybody. I think I've had a chance to meet everyone here, so I don't want to take up too much of your
Just
time.
say your name, Steve.
Oh, yeah,
for the record.
Steve Riley for Hamden Care Facility. I don't want to take up too much of your time. I think Salem was really good in terms of kind of covering part of the issue and why we've kind of presented this to the city as they've considered some changes to the medical marijuana zoning. Just as an update to what's going on in the project over there, we have received FCR approval from the DPH from the state, and what that means is that we actually have product that's growing now. We have employees that have been hired, so the process is underway. Hopefully at some point we'll be also having medical sales. So just to kind of elaborate a little bit on what Salem talked about, being able to stagger the deliveries, it's beneficial in a couple ways. It provides some additional safety. We want to have those deliveries be as random as possible so that we don't become a target to say, well, at 9 o'clock every day, this is when they go. So having some additional time to continually change those is helpful. It also allows us to be a better neighbor in the mills. To be able to move product out at 6 o'clock in the morning or 9 o'clock at night is helpful kind of during off hours when those other businesses are operating, so we don't have to be as disruptive to them. There are other tenants in our mill building and also the abutting mill buildings. Salem also touched on the availability of product. I mean, right now we have a medical product. So the reality is that some people can't get to the dispensary by 8 o'clock at night. Having a dispensary that will be open beyond 8 o'clock would really make the East Hampton location a destination in Western Mass. I'm not aware of another that would be closed at 8, so to have the ability to be open till 9 or 10 or 11 may drive a lot of traffic into East Hampton to come here. If you think about a situation where someone might get home from work at 6:30, they put their kids to bed, you've probably all been in that scenario. You turn around and it's 8 or 8:30, the dispensary is closed. So to have that flexibility would be beneficial. We have started to discuss a host agreement with the mayor as well, so additional sales at the dispensary would be beneficial for East Hampton as well, as it would generate extra revenue for the city. The last thing I wanted to talk about was the competitive advantage, and I think it kind of dovetails with driving traffic here. Just to also make a point that by granting this, we would not be able to just operate until 11 o'clock. We would have to go back and amend our special permit, and the planning board would have control over whether or not they would grant that amendment, and if that wasn't working out, they'd have ability to change that as well down the road. So just a couple things I wanted to mention.
Okay, any questions for Mr. Riley? I have one just because you said the word jobs. I know we had talked about, I don't want to get too off of the topic because this is not what the public hearing is about, but will there be job fairs? Well, I know we had talked about jobs for East Hampton residents.
Yes, and in fact, we have an East Hampton resident that's been hired now. We have very few local residents because most of what's going on is cultivating. So we brought in staff from Colorado that's training. A couple of local people will be bringing on more. I mean, at this point, we have seeds and small potting trays like you would see probably flowers in a nursery. But the intention, actually, we were speaking earlier today about that job fair, and I think that is an absolute, a definite that is going to happen. I just don't know on the timing of that. My thought would probably be after Labor Day, the summer is over, and we can kind of start to get going on that. Probably that would time out better in terms of the actual sales of product.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
So,
I was going
to ask, anyone from the public would like to address the council concerning this appropriation? No? Okay, Councilor.
I will say this came out of committee 2-1.
Okay.
So I move to amend the East Hampton. Oh,
Excuse me. Is there a minority report then? I'd like to hear it, if you voted against.
Certainly. I think it was important to note that at the time of the presentation, the request, I thought, was for the organization to have until 10 o'clock, and then they said, well, geez, why don't we go for 11? And we went to 11. One of the issues that seemed to me important was there are no competitors that are open past 8 o'clock at the present time. So if you went to Northampton or just facilities in Springfield, there is no extra competition. That being said, I think at the time it was my feeling to move from 8 o'clock until 11 o'clock, set up a not a precedent, but a way of looking at marijuana, granted medical marijuana, till 11 o'clock. And the way the legislation was, the initiative petition was written for recreational marijuana, it was written so that a medical marijuana approved site can automatically set up shop at their location. Then, now if we pass this and we have 11 o'clock as the hours, is that really how we want to handle recreational marijuana sales? The model for medical marijuana, for pharmacies in the area, geez, pharmacies close at 7 or 8 o'clock at night, whether it be Rite Aid or CVS. So if we use that model, we're extending hours. And I don't have a problem with someone, if they need medical marijuana at night and that's the right time, I really don't have a problem with that. The issue was concerned about is when recreational marijuana comes before us, everyone's going to say, well, the medical is open till 11, you approved that. Are you approving till 11 o'clock for recreational marijuana? That may or may not be how we view this. I would like a measured approach to marijuana. It's new. I'm wholeheartedly behind it. But I think we need to have a measured approach. So going till 11 o'clock at night seemed a little excessive and setting a precedent. So hence my negative vote.
Councilor Derby.
So I don't believe at this point that a medical dispensary is going to be able to, without any process, be able to sell recreational product. There's going to be a process because we are going to create an ordinance that creates a process. 1. 2, the citizen referendum, which passed in East Hampton by 63%. So that's a mandate. Was to regulate cannabis like alcohol. So, if you go to those mills, we have 2 new businesses down there. They're relatively new, and they are breweries. They sell alcohol. So, intoning that cannabis is somehow, is it more dangerous than alcohol? Well, let me see. I don't know. I'm pretty sure to overdose on alcohol, your blood alcohol content has to be 0.38 to 0.4. That's a lethal dose. Just for the record, there's no lethal dose of cannabis. Cannabis is non-toxic to humans. So if you're worried about toxicity, I mean, that's a legitimate thing to worry about, you know? Also, like, addiction. If someone is, an addict, addicted to cannabis, which is real, there's cannabis use disorder, you can develop a dependency on it. However, it's a psychological dependency, like a dependency on sugar or dependency, any other gambling or sex or other, things that if you get taken away from them, your withdrawal symptoms will only be psychological. If you get taken away from alcohol and you're an alcoholic, you will die. You can die from alcohol withdrawal. So I just want to put a little context here. We're talking about, you can go to Amy's, and we all can go to Amy's and drink until 2 in the morning. And I mean, if you're saying that cannabis is much more dangerous than alcohol, hey, if you can show me that, then I'm there. Show it to me though. I'm a health teacher, and this is something that I understand pretty deeply. And I'm just trying to be fair here, because really the apprehension around, what people call marijuana, which is a name that was given to it to kind of associate it with Hispanic people, that's a problem in itself. But I think one of the things that we should understand about this is a lot of the misconceptions or the feelings we have about it are not based in reality. They're based in gut things that are kind of holdovers from Reefer Madness. And so I just want to put that out there, because, there's this kind of tendency to treat it differently than other things and not look at the whole picture.
Oh, God, sorry, Councilor Smith.
My rationale was a little different. when I look at the local pharmacies, both CVS and the Rite Aid pharmacy in town, both of those have recently extended their pharmacy hours. So while at one point they were at 7 and 8, their time has actually expanded a lot. And the other thing, we had talked about the presence of children and the effects of marijuana on the culture of the landscape of childhood in East Hampton. And, you know, I've worked with and spoken with the Healthy Youth Coalition, and they have, you know, they've reported that they so far have a very good relationship with the dispensary and are looking forward to a partnership to educate the children in really interwoven ways, not just by, for me, having that ongoing relationship and being aware of what those combinations and those connections are with the schools and with the company, and making sure that the profile of East Hampton is not all about marijuana, but we're doing it in a healthy way. I can certainly appreciate that, particularly with children. And in the course of our conversations with this, when we were having the meetings about it, we really went over the safety of it and the where it would be happening and whether or not that would be an entrance that would be open to children walking by and everything. And those were the factors that really pushed me to be okay with an 11 o'clock opening. So I just wanted to give you the broad spectrum of what we all talked about as we made that decision.
Just 11 o'clock closing, not, you said opening. I think you meant 6 a.m.
Around
opening
o'clock, I
and
didn't
an
mean it
11
that
o'clock
way, yeah.
closing.
And I just want to say that, you know, all the security measures are still in place. So that means you have to have a driver's license and a medical ID card, and then that gets you in the first door, and then you're in the man trap, right? And then you have to show those things again, and they look you up in the database, and they don't let you in unless they find you in the database. So if your card is expired by a day, they don't let you in. So it's a highly secure, there's gonna be no kids getting into this. You know, I mean, it's much more secure than a liquor store.
And is it my understanding, as Mr. Rowley mentioned, that we're saying this is a possibility, as a planning board ultimately will say, or is this?
Once we change, so our job is to look at the zoning, and then if the zoning allows it, then they go back and amend their special permit through the planning board.
Okay.
So there's still another layer.
Okay. Councilor Wayne, that's you.
Yeah, when we took the tour, I was most impressed with the safety measures that the company has put in place for the transportation of the cash and the product. And it made absolutely perfect sense at the time when we were discussing it about how they would be doing the transfers from East Hampton to Springfield at all different hours, different times, different vehicles, so that they're not singled out for the possibility of being robbed or whatever. So I think that it's actually a good idea to extend the hours just for that purpose alone. It will secure the product and their cash, giving them a little bit more of a versatile schedule. So I have no problem with it.
Councilor Hayes.
Did we get any feedback from residents or business neighbors or anything like that?
Nobody, I don't think any of the residents came to our meetings.
Nobody.
So there was nobody who had a problem with it
Nobody had a
staying open
problem.
later? Or?
And
There was very little discussion.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay. Councilor Derby, I'll entertain a motion.
Oh, okay. I move to amend the East Hampton zoning ordinance, section 10, medical marijuana, subsection 10.93A, section 3, by changing the hours of operation between the hours of 11 p.m. and 6 a.m.
Second.
Okay, a motion to approve the proposal amends section 10.93A3 medical marijuana ordinance regard to hours of operation. So questions, Councilor Rist?
I just want to make a statement that I was originally opposed, voted against approval of marijuana, but I have been educated. A lot of that education came from Councilor Derby, and I think he is he knows his subject. And I believe that the more I learn about the security measures, the availability of training for local residents. This is a business that's coming, and I have been impressed. I believe in our democracy, especially in this town. I think you said 63%. So that is a mandate, and although I have been opposed to the use of adding marijuana to the list of recreational vehicles to keep ourselves happy, like alcohol, etc., I am now convinced that this is something that the people want to use. We have, at least at our disposal for the writing of ordinances, the precedents and experiences of Colorado and the state of Washington, so it'll be interesting to see where that goes. But I am in favor of making sure that these businesses are able to use the hours they need. I also know from personal family experience, relatives in Pennsylvania, that medical marijuana is a very good help to their conditions. So I just wanted to make that statement. Thank you.
Okay. Additional statements, or Councilor?
Just would like to say I certainly would like to have medical marijuana be available much more than it currently is. I certainly would be in favor of some hours from 6 a.m. to 10 p.m. That would keep it in conformance with the liquor stores and beer and wine locations, and would like to make a motion to amend that the hours be from 6 a.m. to 10 p.m.
Need a second.
There need to be a second on this, if people want a second.
Not hearing a second, I would say.
Okay, so there is no second, so we can't move that amendment forward. So we're... Oh, Councilor.
No, and I would say, like, liquor stores are actually open till 11.
Which ones?
Pizza House.
Pizza.
Yeah.
But I'm not saying the actual sales.
We're just saying.
No, we were just saying.
Legally, they can be open until
They can be
11.
open till 11.
I didn't know that.
I didn't know that because I.
Dan knows.
You know all this, yeah.
He's been doing all this
We
in
open
town a
at
long time.
noon on Sunday.
So let's get back. We have amendment in a second. A motion in a second. The amendment did not get a second. So any other discussion? We'll take a vote on the primary motion. Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain?
I'll abstain.
Abstention? Motion still passes.
Can, Mr. President, I just want to let the council know, last night, the planning board did hold a public meeting about recreational cannabis, and it was pretty informative. So I would encourage everybody to watch that on the public access channel. And I just wanted to say anecdotally, one of the people that got up and spoke about how medical cannabis has made a huge impact on his mother, who is dying of pancreatic cancer, and it was pretty moving. So I just feel like it's something that's worth watching, and I think they'll probably do another one. So,
Okay.
thank you.
Thank you for that information.
President, I move the public hearings be closed.
Second.
Motion and second to close public hearings. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, abstained, motion passes. I believe we have one more thing, Councilor Rist.
Rules and Government Relations. Mr. President, we have before us a request from the mayor for an intermunicipal agreement for a shared conservation agent. We met this evening, and the Rules and Government Relations Committee approved it 3-0. This is a grant-funded shared agent with Southampton. We attempted this a few years ago, but the state grant that we were going to use to fund it was not included in the governor's budget, so it had to be canceled. We've never had, as far as we can remember, a conservation agent. Currently, the Conservation Commission takes it upon themselves as volunteers, and the chair especially is very knowledgeable in this area. They go out and voluntarily deal with complaints, deal with contractor issues, wetlands issues, and of course they have to report to the DEP anything they find. And they're volunteers, so the fact that we would have an agent taking the load off of them is very important, and it's something we've always needed. This is protecting our environment and having someone knowledgeable and paid to do this. This person would report directly to the Conservation Commission, just like the health agent reports to the Board of Health, etc. This allows, this motion, which I would put before you, allows the mayor to enter into this agreement with Southampton. They've been talking about it a long time, and if you looked at the agreement, it's, I think it's, what did I say, 11, it's a part-time position, 19 total hours, 11 hours for East Hampton, 8 for Southampton. It's a non-benefited position. It's $26,300 currently. The search will start with the agreement being signed, and the Pioneer Valley Planning Commission has done a lot of the work on this and is doing the technical assistance. The grant will pay for it for the first year. We will have to fund it for the following years, but I believe Southampton and East Hampton both want to see this agent continue. I don't know if the mayor wants to add to all of that.
So, thank you, Councilor Rist. That was a pretty in-depth discussion of what's been transpired. There's been many, many meetings on this. Pioneer Valley Planning Commission, PVPC, they have been doing the technical assistance on this, but we've met with Southampton, we've met with East Hampton. This has been, to me, one of the positions. I've been here 23 years, and it's been talked about that long. So we came close. You'll remember just a few years ago about the 9C cuts. So the grant didn't happen. We didn't even end up applying for it because that was one of the things that disappeared. So it wasn't an option, but we were on it then. So but the good part was when it did become available again, we were pretty much prepared to get going on it. So this has, to me, been an extreme hardship on our commission, on our commissioners as it is. You have your chair of your Conservation Commission in East Hampton and Southampton doing this work. So everyone's extremely happy that we feel this is a way to add this position. And as you can see, it's a part-time position. But I think it's been sorely needed. When we were thinking about finally just adding staff, you remember 2 years, like the last budget, not this current budget, I was able to put back some spots that were sorely missed. This would have been one of them too. So I'm extremely happy that we are able to get grant funding to get that into this year. And I hope you'll look favorably upon it.
Questions?
This isn't a public hearing.
Right, so do you want to continue?
Yeah.
Any more questions for the mayor?
I'll make
or-
a motion.
Okay.
I move to approve the proposed intermunicipal agreement as authorized by MGL Chapter 40 by and between the City of East Hampton and the Town of Southampton for shared conservation agent services as outlined in the agreement made available for this meeting.
Second.
Okay, motion and second to approve the intermunicipal agreement with Southampton on the shared conservation agent. So questions or comments?
Just about time.
Okay.
About time.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, motion passes.
Mr. President, that concludes.
Great, thank you. Entertain a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, motion passes. See you September 6th.
We have to sign a bunch of